Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to go over the Cloud Security Access Broker and Secure Access Service Edge. These series, they're here to just take you quickly to the concepts, and it's going to be like a quick and conceptual review of the topics. Thank you and stay with me. The first concept that we're going to cover is Cloud Security Access Broker, or Casb. Actually, the Casb is a concept. I mean, in industry, we got Casb, Sase, SWG. These are different concepts and terminologies that are used in industry, sometimes interchangeably, but or they're just using as a similar item, but it's just like the switches and bridges that we know in the networking environment. We had bridges and they turned to switches. So especially, I mean, they were the same thing with multiple or more ports, I would say. But the reason why they're saying that they changed the name, because if they didn't, so they wouldn't sell any, right? So even the Casb and Sase, the Sase is just the successor for Casb. That's what it's known for. But the Casb initially, um, I mean, built based on controlling or having some controls over accessing cloud resources. That means, as you see on the picture, if you want to just access from your place or your home or any kind of, endpoint device or any kind of server device, if you want to make a connection to cloud resources like software as a service or SaaS, or any kind of, IaaS or infrastructure as a service, or even PaaS or platform as a service, you can use the Casb. And the Casb is there for four different type of controls or four different type of activities or security activities, which is compliance. That means it checks against the compliance to make sure that, let's say, PIPEDA, GDPR, or those kind of sensitive in terms of data security are taken care, and they're not. The interchange data or exchange data are not violating any security compliance. The data, so these two components and the security of the data itself, that means it's going to just detect the sensitive data, PII, PHI, or just personally identifiable information, health, person or private health, information, and those kind of, sensitive data, right? And through the enforcement engine, which is in the middle, it's going to just do some threat protection and even data loss prevention. That means threat protection. That means if there is any malware, if there is anything, coming in the communication, it would be detected, and it has like a visibility to those data that are going to be exchanged between the two components. And data loss prevention as well. That means it raises a flag or it protects the data from being lost, right? So if the credit card, let's say, in transaction, social security number, whatever sensitive that is known and detected as sensitive, and these engines are AI, right? They got the machine learning mostly, and they could learn from the transactions. So one day they could not detect like a social security number which belongs to a country which is unknown to these devices, but you can teach them, or they can learn as they go, and they can detect, and you can modify the engines. All right. So what about SASE, or what the SASE is about? The SASE is actually like, we would say, a holistic product that contains many other aspects in terms of both the CASB or cloud and the network itself. Not that only it protects against all those, threat protection, data loss prevention, or even compliance, or any kind of data security or DLP, but also it supports, some other aspects, which is network security, firewalling or firewall as a service, DNS, even zero trust is part of the SASE. Formerly, we spoke, in the other videos, I spoke about the ZTNA or ZTA, and that zero trust network architecture or zero trust architecture is mainly a concept around the security that you will just put on every entity on the network, right? So if there is an, let's say, client to server communication, that client to server communication is protected and is considered, it has to be protected and it has to be secured. And then from there on, if the client wants to just switch or access another server, these two servers, they should not have any trust to one another, right? So it has to just do again the verification, and it has to just pass through some of the security filters in order to access the second resource. That is against the traditional network mechanism that was just, we were just getting to the perimeter network and we had access to all the resources, right? So per entity or per segments or microsegments, I would say microsegmentation is another division of the zero trust. Anyway, the bandwidth aggregation, the band optimization, content networking, network as a service, careers, SD-WANs, these are all parts of the Sase. So once again, the Sase is an overarching product that contains the ZTA, the Casb, and some other features that you could see on the image. Thank you very much, and let's go to the next slide. So usually, these SASE or CASB solutions, I would say, let's focus on SASE because it's more, industry is more tending to deploy and accept the SASE over CASB because it's not only the cloud resources that we may want to protect, and they're just the other resources as well. Some people look at the Casb and SASE or these kind of products as like buying an infrastructure versus, running an infrastructure on your own. That means, let's say, with the traditional mechanism, you would have done, or you would have come to the perimeter network using like a VPN or traditional VPN, or I would say layer 3 VPN. And from there on, you would be considered as a known entity and you would be accessing all the resources. It's just like an extension of the LAN, right? But after we we could have, SSL visibility that we just have an overview in the other slides. We could have some inspection, malware protection, threat protection, DLP, whatever we would like to do if the SSL connections are visible, or if we have the visibility over the SSL communication. We could do all these in the on-prem. So that means you could have all your troops, or I would say all your army, all your employees, whoever is working for the company, working from their place or whatever they want to work from, and then let's say work from home, and they could just make an VPN to the company and be inspected or do whatever you want to do with all those threat protection and whatever mechanism that you may want to use with the existing equipments or service chain or the firewalls or proxies, whatever. And then you could be possibly sending them out both to the internet and to the internal resources, right? So that means that you should have more capacity on your internet, corporate internet, because everyone is just like making a connection to your on-prem, and from there on it accesses the cloud or all other resources. So this is where you want to just spend money on the infrastructure and you want to put pressure on your existing bandwidth against when you hire or when you buy or a product like Casb or Sase, you're just buying an infrastructure. That means that's a cloud entity or cloud component that everyone makes a connection to. And from there on, you got the policy for any kind of inspection or visibility that you want to have, and then send it on either to on-prem or on cloud. So let's take a look, let's take a deeper look. These kind of products usually come with agent or agentless. That means with the agentless, you don't have anything installed in your computer, which is actually always the operations really don't want it to just do install the agents on the machines or endpoints, because they got overhead. It's got like they have to just administer, they have to deliver, they have to just operate, maintain, and just do whatever they want to do in terms of due diligence and due care. So they would just rather less headaches, and they may tend to just do agentless. But with the agentless, you got to use proxy feature on the browser. That means these kind of products, they would just be configured as a proxy on your machine, and your machine makes a proxy connection, which is a trusted entity that it could be deployed over the, let's say, Microsoft Active Directory or any kind of, management that you got in your entire environment. Like Google could be, with its devices or Google products. Let's say Google Chrome, you could just automate installation of the proxy or adding the proxy to your browser, and the browser makes a connection to those components, and those components, they open up and they got the visibility to the content, and they make another connection from there on behalf of the client to the requested service or application. And this is going to be considered as a broken communication. And in between, you could just do whatever security control or whatever inspection that you may want to do. Of course, people don't want to just violate the privacy. That means some of the sensitive data like PII, PHS are not going to be inspected because that violates the privacy and has to follow the GDPR, PIPEDA, or whatever rule that is applicable. In Canada, it's going to be Quebec is Bill 64 or C198 for Ontario. So in any case, the agentless has only visibility or control over the HTTPS or HTTP transaction. So proxy is considered as a bit resource intensive. So if you want to have like SSH or management traffic, you cannot do with the agentless. So agent gives you more or a more variety of controls and protocols that you have. So that means every single transaction on your system is being monitored or is being monitored and inspected by the agent. So that's the basically the benefits of the agent. You got like better visibility and control. You got stronger integration and access control with the product because you have a centralized management. You got higher security because it contains more products and protocols, and streamlined deployment, which is all controlled through the management interface. Thank you very much, and let's get to the next slide. Let's take a look at Sase architecture. So the Sase is pretty much like Casb. All these engines like Zero Trust, Casb, or even Sase, they got an engine that stands between your connections from whatever you want to just make a connection from to whatever you want to just access, right? So it's just kind of a broker or the middleman between you and your destination. So whether you're connecting through the campus, as you can see here on top, through SD-WAN or through any kind of, communication that you got with your different branches or different data centers, it's part of the SASE component, or even from branches themselves if you're VPNing to other branches or any type of, other data centers or even cloud. And if you're just working from home and you want to just use internet in order to access whatever resource that is on cloud or on-prem or off-prem, so you would just use this as a firewall, IPS, IDS, routing, API, identity, visibility, logging, and etc. Right? So this stands in the middle, and it takes the connection, even if it's agent or agentless, they will make a connection to the cloud component, and that component in the middle, which is a SASE control engine or the brain of the SASE, it's a cloud component. So your machines or your whatever component as a source will make a connection to that proxy, and the proxy, or I would say, I just think of it as a proxy. It does all those manufacturing or handling of the data, inspection, logging, whatever it takes to either clean the data or inspect the data or examine the data to make sure that it's sanitized or the data is clean and clear to send, and then it sends it out to the SaaS. So these kind of components actually, one may say that, okay, how do they detect who am I? I mean, anyone could, with having these kind of, components address or agent could be possibly access these resources. But that's not the case, right? They got an identity proxy or identity engine through which they communicate with your an identity system. Or if you're, whether you're using identity as a service like Google Cloud identity or Active Directory or any kind of, identity engine or mechanism that is used in your environment, it should integrate with these kind of products. And these kind of products, through the agent that they install on your machine, without, even if you have the agent on your system, you cannot do and use these kind of components because they, through the management component, they have like a signature or certificate that is being issued to your machine, and that certificate should be validated before you make or establish a connection to any kind of other devices. And that brings us to the pros and cons and deployment challenges of the Sase solutions. So we're just using Sase solution because Sase is just a successor for Casb, and whoever wants to just do any type of those controls over either SaaS or on-prem components and wanted to just purchase infrastructure would be using, will use SASE, and it's getting more and more popular actually. So the pros would be, they got good visibility, data security, they got threat protection, they got compliance engine, and they got many, many more, which is firewalling, DNS, they protect any kind of, either even applications, or if you got some sort of, file sharing on your system, could be Microsoft Samba or any kind of, file sharing through the Linux or NFS, they could be protected by these kind of engines as well. And the cons, of course, they would be overhead, because whether you're using agent based or agentless, you got to have some, overhead, because the operations people, they should recognize and they should know the how to deal with these products. They receive more incidents. They have to jump on many calls to rectify the issues that are opened or cases that are opened by potential users that they're facing problems. So the complexity is another aspect of it. That means, of course, they make your environment more complex, because whenever you're adding, doesn't matter what component, it adds complexity. That means previously I was just monitoring just one VPN connection to my environment. Now that I have to take care of the management console for the Casb, Sase, or whatever product that we're using, and then do even manage or resolve the problems related to any kind of endpoint devices that are communicating through these products. And another cons or another downside of these ones are latency. Any single product in terms of network or security that we're going to add as a hub on the network environment is going to introduce some sort of latency, and the latency has to be accepted. I know you have some sort of SLA. Let's say in banking industry, you got like a certain amount of time that you have in order to just send a transaction to be inspected by fraud mechanism or fraud detection engines, and take it back and make sure that the transaction is clear, and then let the transaction to go through. So you have a certain time. That means you got only, let's say, 100 or 150 milliseconds to send it, back and forth, and get the response from the fraud management engine. So if you as a client, or a POS system as a client, is sending a transaction or making a transaction through the Casb or Sase to the cloud component, or wherever the cloud component resides, and it is expecting to receive the answer within a certain time, and it doesn't receive that one, that means your product is not really meeting the SLA and is not going to be useful. So you have to make sure. I know that the products, like, I don't want to just name because we're just vendor agnostic, but many products in the market, they're just committing to some sort of SLA of, let's say, less than 10 milliseconds or less than 50 milliseconds. You have these features. We are under 10 seconds. If you enable these kind of features, we are under 50 milliseconds. So whatever meets your industry's requirements have to be followed, right? Thank you very much. So that brings us to the end of this session, and I would like to thank you all and invite you to just click on subscribe button to subscribe to my channel to receive more videos. Thank you and have a great one.